Hello, and welcome to Volume 3 in the collected works of Marie-Louise von Franz. My name is Dr. Buser, and I'll be leading us in a quick summary of Volume 3. This is our fourth video in this series. We did one on a biography of Marie-Louise von Franz, and we did Volumes 1, 2, and today we're doing Volume 3. So this is who I am, Stephen Buser, a physician, psychiatrist. I went to medical school at Duke, did a psychiatry training, did a 2-year clinical training program at the C.G. Jung Institute in Chicago, founded the Asheville Jung Center, and currently am co-owner with Chiron Publications. And that's how we got into publishing this series. The reason we're doing this is that Marie-Louise von Franz expressed her wish that at some point a collected works would be made of all her writings with that. And while it took many years after her death, we are now in the process of doing just that, bringing her works together. This is a 28-volume, 10-year project. So this is no easy lifting piece. But for the next 10 years, we are planning to bring forth these volumes, and we're very excited to do so. Many of them are brand new material, like it is, for these first 3 volumes. Some of it is reworked, revised material. Some is already published, but we are excited to be moving forward along these lines. So these are the first 3 volumes that have come out. All 3 have been released. They are part of a series on archetypal symbols and fairy tales. The first 5 volumes will be archetypal symbols and fairy tales. The first one is sort of an introduction and looking at the backdrops and the profane and magical worlds. The second volume looked at the hero's journey, and the third volume looks at the heroine's journey. And that's what we'll be talking about today, the heroine's journey, also known as the Maiden's quest. This is a zoomed in piece of the front cover. You notice the artwork. Each of the volumes has a drawing associated with it from Martina Ott, who tried to take the images within the fairy tales and bring them to life on the cover. So when you look at fairy tales, you can look at 3 different perspectives within a fairy tale. You can look at the male psyche perspective, and that was volume 2, looking at the hero's journey. The primary person is the male hero, and the main love object is the anima, or the princess. You can look at it from the female psyche perspective, which is more what we'll do in this volume today. The primary person is the female heroine, and her main love object is the animus prince. You can also look at it from a transcendent view, where you look at the coniunctio between the male and female within the fairy tale. And that's a higher level of sorts, where you try to look at the anima and animus and the unconscious connections between them. And von Franz talks some about this in volume 3. She also talks about it in her volumes on alchemy. This is a graphic representation of that. The 5 pieces, the heroine, the great mother, the great father, the shadow female, the animus male, those 4 we talked about in volume 1, and the video in volume 1 goes into a fair amount of detail with that. So in the heroine, you still have the 4 archetypal others that she is engaging with, the great father, the great mother, etc. But also elucidated more in this volume is the relationship between the great father and great mother, i.e. the anima of the great father is the great mother, and the animus of the great mother is the daimonic father. So these entities, the anima and animus, are also relating within the fairy tale, just to add another layer of complexity to it. And primarily logos is represented in animus figures and eros represented in anima figures. Now, be careful with all these male-female principles. We certainly acknowledge gender fluidity, and you need to take these with a grain of salt and see it from feminine in general and masculine in general. And remember, these were written about 100 years ago, so some of the pieces aren't fully updated with the current gender perspectives. Nonetheless, von Franz was really quite ahead of her time in these areas. In volume 3, with the heroine's journey, part of that journey is confronting the archetypal mother, often the evil stepmother. We've all seen this in the Disney fairy tales. And the heroine is confronting this great mother, typically. Often there's a dark side, evil stepmother. The great mother carries masculine traits as well, i.e. the animus of the great mother is the demonic father. So these are blended together. And the heroine is overcoming this archetypal evil stepmother, often. So a quote from von Franz in volume 3, she writes, "As can be seen from the above tales, the mother figure is of momentous importance for the female personality. Under the pressure of its negative aspects, the essence of the heroine acquires a distinctive character that conditions the nature of her developmental process, or, as the tale says, sets the task for the quest." So the great mother, sometimes this archetypal evil mother, is setting the stage for the quest. The heroine is going on this great journey, and often it's that archetypal stepmother or mother that is presenting that challenge to her. But when women succeed in maintaining themselves against the animus instead of allowing themselves to be devoured by it, then it ceases to be a danger and becomes a creative power. We women need this power, for strange as it seems, only when this masculine entity becomes an integrated part of the soul and carries on its proper function there, is it possible for a woman to be truly a woman in the higher sense, and at the same time to fulfill her individual human destiny. So again, these fairy tales are pointing this heroine journey along these lines. Now, in the last video on volume 2, we talked about a tetrad and a quaternity in fairy tales, and we looked at a king and 3 sons. There is quite often a similar tetrad in heroine-oriented fairy tales, which is a queen and 3 daughters, or a mother or stepmother and 3 daughters. Think of Cinderella, where you have an evil stepmother, you have 2 dark evil sisters, and then you have one that is the heroine and often diminished and looked down upon. So stories often have this tetrad. The youngest sibling is typically inferior, despised, ignored, or ridiculed. And this quaternity is also representative of wholeness. Von Franz talks a lot about number symbolism, and the number 4 is a mandala of sorts looking at a quaternity and the symbol of wholeness. The danger which threatens both the man and the woman in the magical marriage is always the same, namely that the soul image, animus or anima, slides back into the realm of the unconscious with an infinite number of interwoven images. So a typical hero or heroine's journey is finding the other. And this other sometimes slips away, and the hero or heroine goes home empty-handed, or they capture the other, and there's a ending with a marriage. The prince and the princess lives happily ever after. That is the magical marriage. That is a symbol of the individuation process. Now, for volume 3, which looks at the heroine's journey, von Franz writes about very classic fairy tales that we've all heard of: Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel, and many others that you've heard as well. So I looked up, when did the Disney version of these fairy tales hit the theaters, and was von Franz alive or around for them? And for Snow White, released in 1937, von Franz was 22 years old, and you can read the slides with the others. And I always wondered, have not found any data on it, but I wonder, 1, if von Franz saw the Disney movies, and 2, if she did, what was her response to them? I'll keep looking, and if I can find something with that. But it must have impacted her to some degree, with that, one would think. So in the 2-hour seminar on volume 3, in the heroine's journey, we read 2 to 4 fairy tales in their full version. I won't do that for this brief video, but I will give you a summary of one of them, which is a beloved classic, which is Snow White. And most of you know this, but I'll give you a brief summary anyway. So Snow White's mother, biological mother, is wishing one day that she had a daughter whose skin was as white as snow, whose hair was as black as ebony, and whose cheeks were as red as blood. And this happens after she pricked herself on the snowy window and this blood drops onto the snow. She dies, unfortunately, as many mothers in fairy tales do. And of course, an evil stepmother supplants her. Of course, we all know the mirror, mirror on the wall, where this evil stepmother is asking the mirror, who is the fairest of them all, who is the most beautiful in the kingdom. Initially is the stepmother, but as Snow White grows up, Snow White becomes the most beautiful. Stepmother gets angry, jealous, and orders Snow White to be killed. The huntsman is told to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. The huntsman can't do it. She's too beautiful and innocent and lets her go. He slays a bear instead and brings back the organs of the bear to prove to the evil stepmother that he perhaps did kill Snow White. Of course, Snow White goes off to the 7 dwarves. Evil stepmother asks the mirror, who says Snow White is still alive. And the evil stepmother tries to poison her 3 times. The first time with some magical laces, second time with a comb in her hair, the third time with the iconic apple, the red and white apple. She succeeds in the third and final poisoning with the apple. Snow White falls down dead. The 7 dwarves are crushed. They put her in a glass coffin because she's not deteriorating. She's not, molding and decaying. A handsome prince comes by, finds the coffin, takes the coffin, and as he is moving it, it jostles the apple bite out of her mouth, and she comes alive, and they get married immediately. So that's the summary of the fairy tale. My apologies for being so quick with it. So you'll notice a few things. One that von Franz talks about are the 3 alchemical colors, the white, the red, and the black. And these correspond, if you've read any alchemy, to the nigredo, the albedo, and the rubedo. And she goes into a fair amount of depth into that. The dwarves, the dwarves that appear in the Grimm's version represent unconscious powers, a still completely undeveloped sub or superhuman side of the animus. Dwarves symbolize forces of nature, which work their ways in the darkness of the forest, or in caves, or behind the mountains, that is, in the unconscious. In general, they serve the chthonic gods and have secret knowledge. So von Franz breaks apart many of the pieces within these fairy tales. What do the 7 mountains mean? What do the dwarves mean? What are the archetypal symbols within this fairy tale? There's 7 dwarves, there's 7 mountains, there's 7 sacred luminaries. And von Franz dives deep into the number elements. 7 is a sacred number. There are 7 sacred luminaries, which are the stars in the sky that move through the star patterns, the lights that move in between the stars that can be seen by the naked eye. So those are the 5 planets that can be seen with the naked eye. And then, of course, the sun and the moon. So those 7 celestial objects are moving through. And that's part of why 7 is a sacred number. It's also why there's 7 days of the week. And if you look at the days of the week, they're all celestial bodies. Sunday, moon day, Saturn day. Or if you speak Spanish, lunes, which means moon, martes for Mars, miércoles for Mercury, jueves for Jupiter, viernes for Venus, etc. A quote from von Franz, in antiquity, the 7 planets were generally considered to be the lords over the fate of human beings that exert upon his soul the so-called coercion of the stars. So another reason why the 7 sacred luminaries were represented in the 7 dwarves and the 7 sacred mountains. Of course, there's an 8th, though, because Snow White makes up the 8th. And 7 is sacred, but 8 is moving towards wholeness. So it's a symbol of completion. The 7 dwarves are a stage of transformation of the animus, moving towards a more mature 8th, and eventually the prince, who then comes along too. The mirror is driving individuation. The mirror reflects exactly as it is, despite whatever persona we put in front of us. The mirror is unable to lie. The mirror, as conscious and unrelenting urge for truth and higher consciousness, does not let the seemingly peaceful state persist, because the real personality may not be allowed to remain suppressed this way into the unconscious. It is the tenacity of the stepmother's vanity that leads to the mirror's revealing Snow White's place of concealment. There's the poisoning, there's the laces. The evil stepmother tries to suffocate her by these laces that stay magically too tight. There's a poison comb she puts in her hair that poisons her. Then, of course, the apple that she falls supposedly dead to. The apple is half white and half red, indicating the alchemical colors of completion, which underscore the symbol of the apple as the self. But it's precisely its red side that is poisoned, the naturally more tempting side. The red indicates fire or embers, that is emotional. She is put in a glass coffin. The glass coffin is like an alchemical, hermetically sealed vase, a vase hermetica. It's where she transforms from the naive child into a woman. The dark animus of the evil queen poisons her, but in so doing sets up her rebirth towards wholeness. And the coffin alludes to a rebirth out of the archetypal mother. The magic sleep differs from death by the fresh and radiant appearance of the afflicted one. The dwarves are reluctant to entrust Snow White completely to the black earth. The glass coffin is an adequate expression of her condition. The soul rests, enclosed, split off, and yet visibly trapped in a state of unconsciousness, but not dead. So within the glass coffin, the vase hermetica, there's alchemical transformation that occurs, which is individuation, which is maturity. Von Franz talks about these alchemical colors. So there's black, white, red. Those are the three colors of Snow White. Black is nigredo, representing her death. White is albedo, the glass coffin, the white dove. Red is rubedo, the resurrection, and the union, eventually, with the prince. So the prince arrives. The prince is the animus figure. It's the contrasexual other who comes, who awakens Snow White. And of course, then there's a marriage afterwards. There's this mystical marriage, which is a coniunctio of the anima and animus coming together within the fairy tale to reveal a higher state of individuation in a great coniunctio, alchemically. Von Franz in this volume talks a lot about Snow White and the prince. And then there's the animus of Snow White and the anima of the prince that are relating. But beneath that level, there's the animus and the anima. So the great archetypal anima, the great archetypal animus, and this mystical marriage of those unconscious elements represents the great coniunctio, or the mystical marriage. And she goes into a fair amount of detail with that. So that's a whirlwind tour of volume 3. If you want the full 2-hour version, let us know. We can get that to your organizations. Please sign up for the releases over the next 10 years. We'll be releasing 28 volumes, hopefully. And if you go to our website, chironpublications.com, you can put in an email and we'll send you notification when books come out. And again, if you'd like a fuller version, we've given this talk to a number of Jungian organizations. And of course, you can purchase the books themselves at our website, chironpublications.com, or Amazon, or really any bookstore. So thank you very much. And we will have another video out shortly. Bye-bye.